Improvise. Good.
Thank you for such a wonderful masterclass, Mr. Levinson.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
We expected a lot, but what we received exceeded all our expectations. That was a blast. I have a question for you. Recently, just 3 days ago, my piano student, actually his mom, and he's only 6, she asked me, do we want to drop everything that we're doing and start practicing 2-3 hours a day to make him a concert pianist? As a teacher, I should have been very happy because I'm getting the real student, but I advised them to wait up with giving up everything and wait until he can make more educated decision about what he wants to do. But basically, it's a question about, is a life of professional pianist and a teacher, is it worth it? How good it is?
Well, that's a good question. I think that's different for different people. Actually, not everybody would have the same answer, whether it's worth it for them. First of all, not knowing this particular student, it's hard to say. I mean, everybody has a different, first of all, talent, but also not only that, the desire to do it. And I think that even if you're extremely talented, but you don't really like it, then you're probably not going to get that far. Or if you really love it, but you don't quite have the talent for it, that also is a problem. It's so many things that go into being successful. There's a lot of luck involved as well. But what I think personally, I mean, if I were that age, I would wait a few more years if it were me before deciding that I only wanted to focus on practicing the piano. I think it's probably hard for most people when they're young to know what they really love. Although I can tell you that when I don't know if this is the same for everybody, but for me personally, I think I was about 7 or 8 when I thought, no, what I really want to be is I want to be a pianist when I grow up. I didn't personally have those kinds of thoughts. I would like to be a policeman or a fireman or whatever other kids might think about. I just always wanted to be a pianist. So that was lucky in a way. But I can also say that I went to school. I got good grades in school. I went to a very good college. I did all these things that I know could. For most people, that's the most important thing, is their education in school. The thing is that actually a musical education, taking piano lessons, at whatever level of seriousness you happen to take it, I see how that's beneficial to everybody. Yes, if you're going to be a concert pianist or you're going to make your living as a musician, it's obvious why it's important to take piano lessons. But even if you're not, what I've noticed is that the study of music is... it's hard for me to think of another field that young people might study that involves in the same way. There's a physical aspect, an emotional aspect, and kind of intellectual aspect. All of these things all together, and that having to balance all those things out. I think that's something very particular about studying music. That all three of those things are important and an important part of it. And so, learning those things, being able to be in command of yourself, well, like I said, from a physical, emotional, and intellectual point of view, all those things are useful skills no matter what you end up doing with your life. If you happen to become a pianist, that's obviously important, but they're important in other areas too. And I think also the fact that when you study music, usually it ultimately leads to some kind of public performance. Maybe you perform frequently, maybe you perform infrequently, but you have to play in public. And so learning to do that, especially when you're young, getting used to, I went in front of an audience and I played, and getting that experience in sort of performing under pressure, performing in front of an audience, those kinds of things are useful no matter what your profession ends up being. When I know people who for example, maybe they never took music lessons, and they say, "Oh, I have to speak in public," and they're terrified at the idea that they have to talk in front of an audience. But when you got used to that when you were young, it's not such a big deal. Oh yeah, so I go in front of the audience. You know how to prepare for it. You know how to deal with nerves, the experience of that. So I find that that's useful for lots of things. I don't know. I mean, the music profession is a very hard profession, I can tell you. It's wonderful in some ways because I love music, and I would love to be playing the piano if I had a different job. That's what I would do in my free time. I'm lucky that I can make my living actually with music. But also, it's not the most reliable thing because there's so much. There's so many other things that people. Like the audience is interested in doing. Oh, I want to spend my money on going to a Celtics game, or I want instead of going to a music concert. So it's not easy to make a living doing that. You have to really want to do it so badly that you're willing to work hard and those things. So, but maybe that's not so different from other professions. So I don't know.
I want to go back a little bit, and I know it's the question that doesn't have a single answer or a straight answer, but everybody inclined to answer to a certain angle when it comes to the talent. Where you personally see a musical talent? When you see a child or a young adult playing, some have great velocity, some have great passion, some have incredible tenderness and very special touch. Where would you look for a sign of a talent?
I think you just mentioned some things that are important, but noticing that different people have different talents, and sometimes somebody may have a great talent, physical talent, let's say, as you mentioned, but then they need to work on the sort of more intellectual side, like that's not natural to them, or they might have a lot of feeling for the music, but they're not very disciplined and they don't like to practice. Everybody has something different. I think one of the challenges for any teacher, you or for any teacher, is to figure out, okay, what is it that you're good at and what is it you're not good at, because we need to focus on what you're not good at, but I also want to capitalize on what you are good at. I don't know. I think it's very hard to say. I mean, in the end, the most talented ones are the ones who just grab you, and like, oh, this one has something to say with the music. But I think it's hard. There a lot of people are talented in different ways. Once in a while, you get lucky and you find someone who's talented in all different ways. But it's usually they're good at this, but not so good at that, and we have to sort of work on what they're not good at.
And when it comes for you to choose a student, would you pay attention to perfect pitch?
Maybe. I usually don't ask that question specifically. I'm lucky that I do have perfect pitch, so that I know that's helpful to me. But in a more general way, having a good ear is definitely important. But it's also something that every person can develop. Their ability to listen to themselves and to hear what they're doing and to hear the difference between good piano playing and bad piano playing, and the difference between a little detail, oh yeah, the difference between forte and mezzo forte, or those kinds of things. But I think that that's important, but that all of us can develop from wherever we are. There's a next step that we can get better at that. I know my ear is better than it was before. I mean, it gets better because of some teachers I had who helped me to learn to listen better. And as I've gotten older, I hear more music, and so we continue to improve. So yeah, I'm sure having a good ear is important, but wherever you are, you take the next step, and there's always something more you could be doing.
I have questions that might be the most wonderful questions in the world, but I want to see what children want to find out.
I know some of you had some questions you were planning to ask, is that right?
In fact, they didn't because they just came up with questions. I know that for sure. They're not rehearsed. They're very spontaneous questions.
Do you ever get tired? Like I heard that you have to play 20, sometimes 20 performances a month. Does that get a little tiring sometimes?
Yes and no. Yes, physically it can be tiring. I mean, it takes a lot of energy to play a concert. And also sometimes when if you have to do a lot of traveling, that also can just physically and well, actually mentally and emotionally be tiring. However, I have to say that whenever I'm on stage playing a concert, I don't feel that way. I feel great. I'm really excited about that, and because I really do feel like it's a privilege for me to play this great music. I also try only to play music that I'm really excited about playing, so that keeps me excited about it. But I think many of us have had this experience where, for example, we might feel like you have a cold or something, and then I feel really I don't feel so well. Then you step on stage, feel great. You don't cough, you don't sneeze, everything's fine. Then you get off the stage and think, I feel terrible. And so, but during that time, during the performance, your body sort of goes into a kind of, overdrive a little bit, and you feel good about that. I remember wondering before having the experience of playing, for example, the same program many, many times in a row. I remember thinking, I wonder if I'm going to get bored. Am I going to get bored of playing the Chopin preludes like night after night after night? And I remember wondering if that was going to happen. And I found out that didn't happen. The music is so great. There was always something more to explore in it. And that's one of the great things about what we do. That the music that we play, whether it's Bach or Beethoven or Schubert or Chopin or whatever the composer is, really great music, there's always something more to discover in there. So I have to say, in that sense, I never got tired, and I'm still not getting tired of it. But yeah, sometimes I feel tired because I didn't get enough sleep. but I'm not tired of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like when you were little, did you practice a lot, or like did you every day? Did you did you ever get find it hard to focus and stuff like that?
Yes and yes. I definitely did practice a good amount. I think when I was 5, I had a teacher who didn't particularly make me practice, but who was more encouraging rather than scary. That was that kind of teacher, and I just loved to play. So I'd sit and I would practice, but I don't know how much. It wasn't very disciplined practicing, but I spent a lot of time at the piano just fooling around. Then when I was about 7 or 8, I went to a different teacher who was more sort of disciplined, sort of oriented teacher, and he was great, but that was new for me. Then I practiced sometimes for the purpose of I need to make sure I practice, because otherwise I'm going to embarrass myself at my lesson. But I definitely practiced every day. Definitely that. Once in a while, maybe there was a day that I didn't practice, but really every day. I think it's better if you only had 10 hours in the week to practice. It would be better to practice 1.5 hours every day than to practice 5 hours one day and 2 hours another day and 2 hours, and it's best to just, the consistency is important, because it's just the repeated contact with the instrument and thinking about the music that it kind of digests in a way over time. So I definitely did as a kid, but there are other people who practiced more than I did, but also some who practiced less. It's important to make sure that you love the music, though. I think sometimes if you feel like you're just, when you get better at it, you love it more. So, the more that you practice, sometimes you say, I'm enjoying this more because now it sounds good. So sometimes you have to get past that early stage of saying, I don't want to practice because it's, doesn't sound good. But once you get past that point, it's more fun.
Mr. Levinson, in our audience we have very young musicians. For example, Matthew. Matthew just played his recital, and it was a judged recital. And in his evaluation, he got all the excellent marks for everything possible: musicality, tone, technique. I don't know whether you can believe all that, because he just started, but when he plays one thing, you can tell for sure he loves what you're doing. You cannot take your eyes off of him when he plays. And he wants to ask, he's very shy, but I know in his eyes there's a question. Please come closer to the microphone.
Actually, I have two. What age did you start playing at?
I started playing when I was 5. How old were you?
6 or 7.
Oh, okay. Okay, you can't remember. Okay, that's a good age to start. I think that's a good age to start. But I was 5.
Do you have a specific favorite song?
You know, I don't think so. I like a lot of different pieces of music. There's a lot of different ones that I like, and I like certain ones at different times. I'm more interested in one versus another. And what I try to do is that to make myself feel like whatever piece, if I'm playing a piece myself at the piano, that I try to feel like that's my favorite piece at that moment. And then when I play the next one, that's my favorite piece at that moment. But I like a lot of different music. So thank you for the questions.
I know that Kanwur has a question that will connect you on one unexpected level, I think.
Well, I kind of have two, but I think the one that Tanya's talking about is, I heard you played cello, too.
Oh, that's cool.
And I was wondering why you chose to go professionally with piano rather than cello.
Kanwur plays cello.
Oh, I see. Okay, well, see, that's you've really delved into some ancient history there, because I haven't played the cello in a long time. I'm very glad that I did. But when I was growing up, most everybody played. If they played something, they played one instrument. Somehow, I started playing 2 instruments. I started on the piano when I was 5. I started playing cello when I was 7. And I definitely had the benefit of wonderful teachers on both instruments, and I had some great experiences playing the cello, doing things that I wouldn't have gotten to do if I only played the piano, like I got to play an orchestra, and that's something that I wouldn't otherwise get to do. I played a lot of chamber music, which you can do on the piano, but it's a little easier on the cello. It's just for pianists to learn chamber music, there's just a lot more notes to learn. So I got a lot of experience doing that early on that I probably wouldn't have otherwise. And I had, like I said, I had great cello teachers. As I went through school, I started to feel like I just needed to make a decision one way or another. Like, for me to really be great at either, I was going to need to focus on one of them. For me, that decision happened when I finished with high school. I said, you know, I think this is what I'm going to do, is I'm going to be a pianist. That's what I'm going to do. And I think I was always a better pianist, actually. I was always just a little better at it. So that was one of the main reasons for that. But that, you know what, before that, I sort of had, I think, a little bit different personality on the 2 different instruments. I think my cello playing, this is somehow natural to the instrument, was more emotional somehow, and more, it was a little sloppier, but it was more, you know, on the piano I was much sort of smarter and disciplined, and maybe that was because of my teachers, or maybe it was because of the way the instrument is. And the day that I stopped missing playing the cello, because I don't really actually miss it, believe it or not. That's actually, my wife is a cellist, so I have plenty of cello around the house, but was when I started to feel like that my cello personality sort of started coming out in my piano playing, the sort of more emotional or whatever natural way, then I felt like I didn't miss it so much anymore. But you know, now if I try to play, which, you know, maybe I'll play a few notes, the thing that I notice is that, first of all, my bow arm, totally gone. Like whatever the brain or muscles or whatever it is that you need to do that, it's like I don't remember how to do that. I bet if I practiced for, you know, a few weeks, maybe I could get back some or all of that eventually. And the other thing is that I forgot how much you depend on having these calluses on your fingers. And when you play a string instrument, you develop these calluses here, and I forgot about that, because if I play for a while, it's like, oh, it hurts. It actually hurts to press down those strings for a while. So yeah, so that was for me. I think some people, you know, I guess they can do lots of different things, but I found that when I was younger, I could do a lot of things. As I got older, I needed to kind of choose. So you don't have to choose yet.
I have, I want to surprise somebody else, but I really have to. There's, behind every great student, there's even a greater parent. So I really want at least 1 or 2 questions from parents. Cindy, you have a question.
Yes, I have two young kids. I didn't prepare, but I really want to ask you, how much you think the parents can help the kids going to the right direction as music, as we have a good teacher, and how I can
never say no.
You know, that's a very good question, and I have the same question myself, because I'm a parent. I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, and 2 daughters, and sometimes wondering, oh, should I how much should I get involved in, let's say, one of them takes piano lessons. Not with me, though, by the way, because I think it's important for me not to, to be supportive and not just, that she doesn't have a piano lesson every day when I walk down the stairs, But of course I help her, and my other daughter is playing violin. How much I should sit there and tell them what to do. I think that probably, so for me, when I was a kid, my parents didn't really get involved that much, other than to bring me to the lessons, and they were at the lessons, but they were very supportive in the sense that my mom was always at every single lesson. And so it made me know that it was important that my behavior and my attitude. But I can say that with my children, for example, they seem to be different. I think I need to help them a little more for whatever reason. That's just their personality. So I think, first of all, the most important responsibility for a parent, if you want them to be taking music lessons, is to find a good teacher. So once you've done that, you've done a lot of it, and of course then you're paying for it. So that's another big thing part of it. So that's the most important thing. But then I think it is good to be there at the lesson and to try and, as much as you can, understand. Okay, what are they working on? And at home, remind them. Oh, don't forget to do this. Right. And I think it's good at a young age. At a certain age, I'm sure they need to be able to do their own thing, and you have other things to do besides just sit there with them while they practice. But I think a little bit, especially getting them started, and if it's only sometimes and not all of the time that you're helping them, I think that's good. And maybe again, it depends on the age and the maturity of the kid too. But eventually, I'm sure they can help themselves. But I think also it's useful to talk with the teacher and say, can you just tell me what would you like me to do, or is there something you want me to make sure? Do you want me not to talk to them about this, or if they start practicing this, should I tell them, oh, don't that's probably also good to ask the teacher, whoever the teacher is, to just, how can I be supportive without telling them the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So.
It's maybe more of an issue because you're a pianist, and then you can come up with your angle, and with parents who are doctors and who are engineers, they will only install what we say. So we're not that much on guard.
Mm-hmm.
One more. No, do you have a question?
I can stand here and I can shout really loud. So as a teacher, in your experience, what do you find to be more effective, or the most effective way to get kids to learn the piano? For example, I find that, because I come from Thailand, and in Thailand I see that a lot of people will just focus on, you know what, you do this wrong, you have to do this, you point this out. Here, I see that it's more like motivating. Oh, you're great job. How do you find that balance, and what do you think is better for kids?
It's a good question. I actually don't teach a lot of younger people, so I don't. But most of the students that I work with are college age. But it's not a different issue. It's about what to tell them. What I would say, part of it is that it depends on the student. Different students, you have to try and figure out what's going to motivate this one. And some of them are motivated by fear. Some of them are motivated by encouragement, because it actually really depends on the student. There's some, if they're very, very confident already, then you can give a little more, like, okay, you need to fix that. This is not good. We're going to do that. But what I think is an important ingredient that people forget about is making sure that any student at any age hears great piano playing, whatever it is. And even good piano playing, hearing the other kids that are studying with your teacher, that's already useful, because that encourages them to say, oh, I want to learn that piece. I love that piece. And so but even more important, to go to go to a real concert, go and hear one of the great pianists to play a concert in Jordan Hall or Symphony Hall, and go to that. Then they say, oh, I wish I could do that. Or even short of that, just go on YouTube and type in Richter, or Horowitz, and you see, oh, that's what it could sound like to play the piano. And that aspect, I think, is important too, to say, oh, that's, and I think that's, for me, maybe that's why I knew at an early age that I wanted to be a pianist, because we had some records or something of Horowitz, and I thought, I want to do that. And I think that's part of it. Once the student feels like they know why they want to work hard, then they're probably more willing to accept a little bit like, okay, if you want to sound like Horowitz, you better fix your pedaling. So, so I think it's important to hear great pianists also, not so that they, and you know what, it's not all that, because that can be discouraging. We hear this, I'm never going to be like that. But to hear like the kids who are just a little bit more advanced, or a few years more advanced, I think that's very useful to do that too. And like I said, maybe you'll hear a piece that you get excited about wanting to learn, or you also hear, oh, that's great. Oh, I think I could do that. I know for my children that makes a difference. They hear someone and then they get more motivated. So.
What about another question, Cindy?
Just, I don't know, did you read the book about the tiger runner?
Oh, I haven't read that book, but I know my wife is reading that book, so I know something about that. Yeah.
What do you think as that kind of parent are you?
Good question. I since I haven't read the book, it's not fair for me to really comment. I've only heard about it. I think that it's like 50% of it is good and 50% of it is like not good. I think you want the kids to be able to. Part of the thing about playing music is, I think no matter what, they need to enjoy it, and be especially, well, first of all, if they're not going to be professional musicians, then first of all, the only reason they're really doing it is to enjoy it. But even as a professional, you cannot become a great artist if you hate it. You know what I mean? So I think that comes across in your playing. It's just you'll never get beyond a certain point. So I think it's a hard balance, because kids definitely, I think they need some push. They're not, they would rather most of the time just be playing video games or or watching TV. That's it. But it's hard for them to see, as we know as adults. Let me tell you that 20 years from now, you're going to be glad. You may not. I know you don't believe this, but you'll be glad that you spent your time playing the piano instead of playing video games. Because even that's hard to see now. At the same time, I think it's important for them to learn how to motivate themselves a little bit. So I don't know how to do that exactly, but to help them to understand that eventually they're going to be on their own. They have to be the ones to make themselves practice. And because I know when I was a kid, I knew lots of other kids who were doing great. They practiced the piano all the time. They did really well. They won competitions. And as soon as they got out of the house and they went to college, that was it. They never touched the piano again, because now that my mother isn't making me do it, I'm not going to do it anymore. And so because somehow they didn't get that love of it, they was like, I'm only doing it because she makes me. So I think that's, it's hard to find the right. I don't know the answer, honestly, but I think that it's important to think about the answer and to sort of just balance those things a little bit. The encouragement to make them want to do it. I think that to me is the most important thing you can give them.
I really appreciate different people came today. Some are students, some are parents, and some are teachers for a long time. We have Sandra in the audience, our Sharon, a famous teacher in voice and piano.
I don't know how to encourage competition. I feel that they should at least do a recital. I try very hard to encourage this. But how do you make a child want to compete? They really don't want to. They don't want to be compared with anyone. They just want to enjoy it, and they do. They enjoy the music. They enjoy what they're doing, both voice and piano. And the vocals, no problem. The vocalists want to compete all over the place. But the pianists just don't want to. They want to just be themselves. And I haven't been able to force myself to make them compete. Because they don't feel the need to. They just want to enjoy the music.
I think it's not bad that they enjoy the music, but I think that I think you're right that for many kids that the competition is probably a useful, motivating tool. And I think we can see, those of us who are not in the middle of that, we're not the kids going to the competition, it doesn't matter whether you win or not. You're going to get something out of it by doing it, whether or not you win. But they don't see that, but it's obvious to us. I think probably you're on the right track in the sense that the first step is just to get them playing in public for, the more that they can do that. And maybe I know that there's a sort of an intermediate step in a way where like somebody will play and there'll be some kind of an evaluation type thing. Some other teacher comes to your house and said, okay, I'm going to give each one of them a little grade, and that sort of makes them feel like, oh, I have to prepare a little bit more, and then just to give them a sense of like where they are. Then beyond that, I would say the next step is don't give them a choice. Just say at the beginning of the year, on May 6th, you're going to this competition, and and I think that once then maybe after a few times of performing, to try to convince them that you know what, in fact, the result is not the important part, but I know that this is going to help you to prepare better and to really do your best because of this little extra pressure. So that's what I would say. Don't ask them, just tell them.
Like, I have trouble, I don't know if it's because I'm a teenager or something, but I can't sit down and practice for more than like half an hour. That's like I'll like get up and like fiddle around with something, and then like I'll not even come back and forget about it. And as a professional pianist, I know that you have to practice like a lot. So is there any like helpful tip or anything to practice longer?
You know what? Some people I think that they can sit there and concentrate for hours, but I know I can't either. I mean, maybe for 45 minutes is how long I can concentrate. But then I get up, I take a break, and then after a few minutes I go back. And I think that you would find that maybe for you half an hour is fine. Just say, fine, I'm going to practice for half an hour. Then I'm going to take 5 minutes and do something totally unrelated. I'm not going to think about the piano. I'm just going to eat a piece of chocolate or whatever it is, and then 5 minutes later I'm going to go back to the piano. And I think that's the thing. It's yes, you definitely need breaks, mental break, even physical break is part of it too. But mostly it's the sort of a mental break. I think the trick is then not to say, oh, I'll just start watching this TV show for 5 minutes, because then next thing you know it'll be like 2 hours later. I just couldn't turn it off. So I think anyway, I think that's fine. Yes, you should take breaks, because you know what? It's also not useful to practice. It's not totally useless, but it's not as useful to practice if your brain isn't 100% engaged. So then take a break and then come back 5 minutes later. Now I'm much more focused. So.
My grandmother, she was a doctor. She always insisted that changing the type of activity is the rest in itself. Mm-hmm. Going from piano to math would maybe solve the problem.
Actually, I think you're right. I mean, for example, if you go to the gym, for example, you say, oh, I'm going to exercise this, and then you can't keep doing that forever. Then you say, well, now I'm going to do some of these, and then you go back to, oh, now I'm going to do this, or now I'm going to do these. It's sort of going and doing different things. I think that's absolutely right.
It reminded me when my friend took me to aerobics class, and the instructor gave us the certain steps or exercise, and in 2 minutes I thought that I'm going to drop dead and I cannot move a single limb. And then she changed the type of exercise, just another step, and I was a new person. And then in 2 minutes, and then by changing it, maybe different groups of muscles, I didn't stop for 45 minutes. I made it through.
How can you be successful?
Good question. I think everybody's idea of what successful is, I think, is a little different. But first of all, I think you have to figure out what you want, and then once you figure out what you want, you try to divide it up into the steps to get there, and then just keep at it. I think those are the things. But first, you have to know what you want. That's the first thing.
And Catherine has something.
Like when you're playing like at a performance, do you ever get like really nervous? Because like when I play, sometimes I just like get so nervous. I just like forget like where I am at and stuff.
Yes, absolutely. I think people ask me that a lot. Like, oh, do you still get nervous? I've been playing the piano for how many years? Do you still get nervous? And definitely. I mean, I definitely get nervous for a public performance. First of all, I am better at dealing with it than I used to be from the experience of so many times of playing. That makes a difference. You learn how to play even if you're nervous. And yes, it's also true that also because of experience, I am less nervous than I used to be in a performance, usually because I've had a lot of experiences where like nothing bad happened. I didn't, my head didn't explode. People didn't boo. None of those things happened. It was all fine. So, and I know I've learned also from experience how to prepare. And for example, what happens to me when I get nervous a lot of the times is that I start hearing things in all these incredible details that I never noticed before. Like, oh, look at that. Am I supposed to play that with a fourth finger or the fifth finger? You know, or I start noticing this little inner voice that's interesting. Or if you're playing a concerto, let's say with the orchestra, oh, listen to that French horn part. I never noticed that before. Because when you get nervous, all of a sudden everything is working like 20 times harder, and the adrenaline is going, and you hear all these details. And sometimes that's distracting. So so for that reason, actually, it's not surprising this would happen to you, because you have an idea like, oh, I want it to be good. When you're really young and you don't care, you don't get nervous. It's like, oh, whatever. You know, it's like, oh, is it finished? Right? You know, that can happen. Sometimes it happens when we practice at home, right? You're playing a piece and you're thinking about like, oh, I have to remember to do my math homework, right? And then you get to the end and say, oh, I just finished playing the whole piece. I guess it was fine, but because you weren't thinking about it. In a concert, that isn't going to happen, and it shouldn't happen. You don't want to play like that in a public performance. So part of the way to prepare for that is, for example, even if you know the piece, can play it very fast, is to practice it very slowly and thinking about every note. So that when you get on stage and you have this sort of hyper-awareness, that it's not such a shock. That you think, oh yes, I know, I use my fourth finger there, and I know that's a B flat and not a B natural. Those little things, that definitely helps me, and it's easier that's basically the description. So that helps me then when I get nervous, I think, but I'm okay. And usually also after the first few minutes, I feel fine. And after the audience claps, like, okay, I feel better now. So that's fine.
Michael.
Thank you.
Well, how when you made a mistake?
What happens if I make a mistake, or have I ever made a mistake?
What happened?
What happened? Oh, you know what? Sometimes, you know, that I make mistakes, and that happens all the time in a concert. But what I figured out is that about 99% of the time the audience doesn't know it. So I just keep going. And you know what? One time when I was about 10 years old, I was doing this thing where I went to all these different schools, and I would play for the kids at the schools. And then I had to do something just like what we're doing now, is to answer questions for the kids. So one time I was playing this piece by Bartok called the Bear Dance. And I remember I was playing, and it was the first time I ever played it, and it was, you know, and I remembered all of a sudden, I just didn't remember what came next, so I started making it up. And I was just playing something totally, you know, not Bartok anymore, it was Levinson. And then I remembered, oh yeah, that's how it was. And then I kept going. And of course, you know, the audience, they didn't even know it. So, but the reason they didn't know it is because I just kept playing something. So, you know, sometimes that's what you have to do. But no matter what happens, you keep going. So.
We have the last question, if I may. All musicians, all great musicians, I've read books, I guess. Chopin, Mozart, Beethoven, all those great players, they kept on teaching. Maybe it was a calling, maybe there were pragmatic reasons. How about you? What's the balance between love of performance and love of teaching?
That's a good question, because I do like doing both of those things. They both have their pluses and minuses. The nice thing about playing concerts, I love playing concerts, actually. I love doing that. But the hard part of that is that for me, when I was doing more of that than I am now, is so much traveling, being away from home. I didn't love being away from my family quite so much. I didn't mind it somewhat to be on my own and be traveling, but it was just, sometimes it was just too many hours or too many days or weeks just, you know, away from home. So the other thing about a performance is that sometimes can be kind of impersonal in a way. I know the audience is there, but I don't really talk to them. When you teach, you can sort of have this one-on-one relationship with another person in the room, and can really, you know, you're there with somebody who also cares about music and something that I care about, and so you have this sort of opportunity to work on that thing that you both enjoy doing. So that's one of the reasons that I like doing both of those things and finding a balance. It is hard to do both of those things sometimes because there's only so many hours in the day. If I have concerts, I need to find time to practice. And after I've been teaching for a while, I'm tired. You know, it takes a lot of energy. You may not realize this, students, but it takes a lot of energy to teach. And so So that it is hard sometimes to juggle all of those different things, but I enjoy it. And like I said, the one thing about teaching is the opportunity to really work with somebody and on music, with something that matters to me and matters to them, and on a very personal level. It's nice to see them make progress. That's rewarding. The performing I love because I love the music and playing great music. Where I actually, one of the hard things about teaching is that you can work with a student for hours and hours and hours, but in the end, they're the ones that have to play it. You can't do it for them. And so it's nice performance, like, I am in control of what I'm doing. I can't really control what you do up to beyond a certain point. I can only help as much as I can. So it's nice to be able to control things that way. So.
My friend Bella Davidovich, she's on the picture here, famous pianist, and she likes that saying that at the lessons we do to the students anything we want, and on stage they do to us anything they want.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So you may not realize, those of you who are students, that for the teacher, it can be very nerve-wracking when your student plays a performance, because you think,
you're not in control.
there was only I helped you as much as I could, but now you have to do it.
You want to do something, but nothing you can do.
Right.
You're just so helpless. It was an incredible to see you here. Almost unbelievable.
Great, thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Just
today.
unbelievable how you can be here. So now I'll be teaching, and the image of you here will always encourage me and inspire me. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
I know that.
Oh yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. So I think that's a step in the right direction. But just keep that in mind, that that's what the piece is about. This sort of expressing a kind of a lament. Improvise.